Hey, Chris, that's certainly an abrupt stop of the music, but
We need better music.
yes, we do. Um, so, cra- yet another crazy week.
Yeah.
I saw something the other day that said there was an IT company sitting out there that potentially was compromised, and the bad guys were looking for help to attack it. You got some information on that for us?
Yeah. So it's a managed service provider, MSP, similar to what Bob and I do. Although we do some more stuff than that, but like basically they ran VMware. There's been a bunch of vulnerabilities and exploits for VMware this year that you could launch ransomware attacks against the hosts, and then you could basically encrypt all of the virtual machines. Which means if you're a managed service company and you're hosting multiple client accounts on a few servers could be encrypted and it could take down all of your customers. In this case, the threat intel that we've seen is that there were roughly 100 VMware instances and I think 1,000 servers and more than 50 companies involved.
Oh,
And
this is a repeat of what we saw 6 months ago with the data center 365 guys, where I
yeah,
had direct clients this is a hosting company, not necessarily an MSP, but all those guys were out because the bad guys got into the infrastructure, and right now there's a class action suit sitting out there for people that had all their eggs in one basket with the data center 365 guys. So,
I don't know.
if there really is another one of these instances out there, that's not a good thing.
Well, it's kind of terrifying too because they have no clue. And the
Oh,
threat
really?
actors are actively trying to get other hackers to help them so that they can launch it simultaneously against all 100 VMware basically instances.
Oh, crazy.
So they're actively trying to find other people so that, and they're willing to pay them. So they're going to pay them to do this. And we all know it's ransomware at this point because like the way that extortion works, double extortion. I mean, it's going to be ransomware.
Yeah, especially if you got 100 attacking on one plate. Yeah,
Oh
it's going
yeah,
to be a ransomware play versus
1,000
exploit.
servers. Yeah, 1,000 servers. More than 50 companies involved. 100 VMware hosts, or they said instances. I'm not sure if they're talking about hosts or if they're talking about like individual like clusters. But either way, that's a pretty massive attack. And the MSP right now has no idea.
That's
This
crazy.
kind of brings back to what you and I were talking about before. It's like, who's watching the MSP?
Yeah, it's um, you know that's something that we've been talking about, and
Yeah.
Chris and I have both been actively working toward that direction individually in our companies, working with a third party to really um, test us and to test our processes to make sure that our clients aren't necessarily our stuff and our clients aren't at risk. And people might go get an IT guy or an IT company down the street, and who really is watching their stuff? Have they earned any trust level certificates from any third parties?
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing in our industry is there's a couple of standards, but I mean, really, for us, it's something called SOC 2 we could get, but that's only validating you're doing certain practices. It still doesn't validate everything. It doesn't validate that you're actually secure. It just validates that you have processes in place and things like that. So we're going a little deeper. We're actually getting stuff tested.
Hmm.
So that's critically important. But there's no standard in our industry for starting a company. Anybody can go start an IT company.
Yeah,
Maybe
actually, I had
fired
that
from their
conversation
job.
with somebody this morning. I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
anyone can start a company tomorrow.
yeah. I mean, they can get fired from their job because they're terrible at their job. And what do? They go start an IT company. And if they're good at talking to people and good at sales and things like that, they can convince people to be their customer. And you're putting your trust into these people into these companies to take care of your data, and especially if they're hosting information for you. I mean, the level of trust that you're giving them. I mean, it's just
You know,
it's a lot.
for the most part, I'm not sure why people are building up private data centers anymore, because
Yeah.
we're pushing everything over into Microsoft Azure just because, the infrastructure is there. It's nothing that we need to build.
We come on, we both know why. It's called profit.
Yeah.
We so let's look at the elephant in the room. Let's just call it what it is. When you're an MSP or an IT provider and you're hosting stuff internally, how many of them are actually going to go through and do it the right way? Have all of the high availability you're going to get in Azure or AWS or Google, have all of the protections in place? The answer is probably not many. The answer is, if they're looking for high profit margins, they're going to do it as cheap as they can, which means they might have a couple of servers. They might be stacking
In your
customers on
garage.
top of that. Yeah. Let's hope it's in a data center. Let's hope they at least rent space in a data center, colo it or something. But they look at the price of Azure, and instead of realizing all the other value adds that come with something like that, they're like, oh, I can do this cheaper in my data center. But the reality is, if they don't do everything right, if they don't have those processes in place and those like segmentation's a big one. If they don't have things segmented properly, and they don't have all the security controls, this is what happens. This is what can happen.
And it happens in the big ones that are audited too. So, right now, like you said, it's super cheap. At least in this market right now, it's super cheap to get a fast internet connection in somebody's house. I can get a gigabit symmetrical connection for $100 a month.
Yeah, we can't do that. We can't do that here. But yeah,
if I did that, stuck two servers in the garage and plugged them in, people would think that, oh, we're in the cloud.
I mean, they're just in your garage. Don't lose power at that case. Don't worry about the cooling. Don't worry about the dust, the backup. We're tongue in cheek about this and we're lighthearted, but it's true. I've seen it so many times where companies are like, well, you read forums, we talk to other people in the industry, and they're like, it's more profitable if I host it myself. Well, it's also a riskier proposition. I mean, I don't know. Your last cyber liability insurance policy that you went to look at, was it asking you whether you host data for customers? Because mine did.
Yeah, but it didn't ask me if I was hosting them in my garage. But
yeah, well, mine asked me that, and luckily I could just check the box saying no, because if you use public cloud like Azure, AWS for Amazon, or Google Cloud, that's fine, because they have a trust level with them for making sure that their infrastructure is secure. Now, let's not say that the stuff you put there is secure, because I mean you could have plenty of holes poked into it, and that's your fault. But like from a baseline perspective, they trust them.
I can't tell you the last time I touched a physical server out of a box, because we've moved everything out. Because I might have touched. When I went to some client site, I might have seen something. But as far as one of our clients getting a fresh new Dell or HP server, I can't remember doing that in the last 4 years.
The internet.
So we've been pushing everything to the cloud.
Yeah. We do some servers, especially if they have crappy internet, but it's all virtual. So we're doing all virtual, so that'll take this off the rails. But there's a lot more flexibility with virtual machines than there are with just doing physical. So we'll put one physical machine or two physical machines in there and make sure the backup's in place. It's just, when you start doing the math, I think having stuff on site's actually more expensive than just putting it in a cloud that's already designed for high availability.
Absolutely, if they're trying to design it for high availability, but if they stick a server in the corner in their office, yeah, it's going to be cheaper out of the box. They're not going to have all the redundancy. They're going to have downtime, and when it's down, it's going to be down until you can get replacement hardware, if you can still get replacement hardware.
Oh man, even with the hardware agreements, the last couple of years really showed just how much you need like redundant hardware, because even under warranty services, we had so many warranty things for just like PCs and things like that, where it's supposed to be next business day, and we had stuff down for like 5 or 6 days, like desktops and things like that. Luckily, we didn't have any servers that problem, but they couldn't find technicians with COVID and everything like that. They were having a hard time having technicians actually be able to make out to your office and actually have the parts. So it's really just kind of shown us like how much extra hardware you really need. Like have extra computers on hand. If you're gonna have a server at your office, you might want to have at least two,
Yep.
just to make sure that you can do that. But going back to what we are talking about with testing, it's not just us that needs to be tested. That sounds fun. Um, from a cybersecurity perspective, but you know what, everybody should have their cybersecurity tested.
And I
Knowing
think
where you
right now,
stand is kind of critically important.
I think the big message and takeaway this week really is, if you're using outsourced IT support, how are they being tested? How, what security measures are in place and for you and for them to really protect your data? And that's a really, really good question to go back and ask your IT guys to know
And on top of that,
in-house or outside.
I'll add to that. Ask them what standard that they're using in their business. The two big ones that, well, I guess there's really three, but the two big ones that we can follow would be like NIST CSF, so cybersecurity framework, or CIS version 8. And then if they're really into like DoD and stuff like that, they might be CMMC.
Mm-hmm.
But they should be having a framework in their business and understand that they're actually doing things around a framework. So is it audited? No. Well, CMMC is, but NIST and CIS aren't. It's self-reporting. But to have a framework is important. And you can even ask for copies of stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's all I got for this week.
Yeah. Hopefully nothing bad happens with that MSP. Hopefully they find out who it is first and let them know.
Yeah. So I know it's not me. So that's all. That. No, it's not me. No, it's not you. So
yeah, that's important. So cool. All right.
Cool.
Drop a like, share, follow.
Like, share. If you got any questions for future things, please drop them in the comments below. If you've got any security concerns, reach out to Chris or me directly, and we'll get them addressed. Have a great day.
Sounds good.